We are going to look at properties of addition and multiplication. First, we're going to look at the commutative property of addition. This can also be pronounced commutative. I'm going to call it commutative property of addition. This property states that the order of the add-ins may change without changing the sum. So let's look at this example. 12 plus 9 plus 8 plus 1. If you were to add from left to right, you would be mentally adding 12 plus 9, which is, if you think about it, 21. And then if you add 8 more, that would be 29 plus 1 is 30. Very doable, but sometimes we could look at it and change the order of them all to make it easier. It's all about making mental math easier. So what if mentally we kind of rearranged it and grouped things together that make 10? 12 and 8 make 20. 9 and 1 make 10. So by mentally rearranging them, it's real simple to say that 8 and 20, or 8 and 12 is 20, 9 and 1 is 10, so the answer is 30. So it's just about making mental math easier for us. Now here's another example. If you look up here, you could go 22 plus 20, which is 42, and then add 18. But because this one has a 2 in the ones column and this one has an 8, I know that makes 10. So if I regroup them mentally with 22 plus 18, I know that that is going to be 40. It's like taking 2 from this place and taking 2 over here. So this would be 20 if I took 2 away. And if I added that 2 over here, that would be 20. So I know it's going to be 60. This is all about trying to make mental math easier. Commutative property. This also works for multiplication. The commutative property of multiplication states that the order of the factors, because factors are the numbers that are being multiplied, may change without changing the product. Again, this helps mental math be easier. Okay, I can go left to right here, and I can say 8 times 3 is 24, and then 24 times 5 is a little harder mentally. But when I look up here, I know that when I multiply 8 times 5, that makes 40. And if I can do 40 times 3, I know that 3 times 4 is 12, and then I add a 0, and it's 120. So that was much easier for me to do than trying to do 8 times 3 and then times 5. So it's all about making it a way that you can do it mentally. Here's another example. Now this time we have a variable, an unknown number. Remember that a variable is just an unknown number that we're looking for. So that would be the same thing as having 6 times an unknown number times 10. And we just put a variable there to show that we're looking for that number. I can't multiply this number, this unknown number by anything because I don't know what it is. So with commutative property, we can rearrange it. I can say, well, I can do 6 times 10, which is 60. And I still don't know what a is, so it's 60a. And we write that. This number in front of the variable is called the coefficient. And this is the variable. When we have a number times a variable, we always write the number first, and we call it a coefficient. You would never write it a and then times 60. That's just not how we do it. We have a standard way of writing it. We would write 60a, which means 60 times a. And because of the commutative property, we can do that. Okay, now we're going to look at the associative property of addition. This is completely different. This time we're looking at the grouping of the add-ins. They may change without changing the sum. When you have the associative property, you have parentheses. And remember with PEMDAS, parentheses means do me first. So if you were to look up here, this is saying do 4 plus 3 first, which is 7. And 7 plus 7 is 14. On the right side, it's saying it's rearranging the parentheses. So instead of grouping 4 plus 3 together first and saying let's go 7, 7 plus 7 is 14. Of course, that's not hard because that's elementary math. But over here, if we decide to regroup it and say, hey, instead of adding 4 plus 3 first, let's add 3 plus 7 first because that makes 10. and then 10 plus 4 is 14, and that is much easier. When you have the associative property, you're going to have parentheses. So it may even help in your notes to put parentheses to indicate that to yourself. Okay, so let's look at another example. Okay, up here. Now, you can't do 3 plus an unknown number because you don't know what the unknown number is. So if we group the 3 and the 7 together, we know that is 10, and that is 10 plus e. Now here is the biggest mistake I see students make. We just did the commutative property of multiplication, where I said that we would add a coefficient and then the variable like 10e. That is when it's 10 times e, and the multiplication sign is invisible. When we have addition, you have to have the addition sign. You cannot write 10e, that would mean 10 times e. So be really careful when doing the associative property that you have that plus sign. It would be 10 plus e. This also works for the associative property of multiplication. Again, it's the grouping with the parentheses, because the parentheses is changing the order of you do it, what goes first. So if you look at this, 5 times 9 is 45, and 45 times 2 is 9. Not too bad, but anytime that I can group things that make 10, it would be a lot easier. So if I say I'm going to group the 5 times 2, which is 10, and then multiply that times 9, that is much easier. It's the same, it looks the same as the commutative property because you're changing the order, but it's all about grouping it differently with the parentheses. So this has parentheses. Okay, associative property again. Now again, here we have our unknown number. We can't multiply anything times this, but we can multiply the 8 and the 5 together, and then leave the x outside, and so it would be 40x. Remember the coefficient, or the number is going to come first. We're not going to write it x times 40. 40x means 40 times x, and the multiplication is invisible. It's understood. The next property is the additive property. When 0 is added to a number, the sum is the number. Pretty simple. 115 plus 0 is 115. Up here, we have this set of parentheses, so again, we're going to rearrange a little bit. We would have 17 plus 0, that's regrouping with the associative property, plus m, but again, you're adding plus 0, so it doesn't increase anything on your 17, so it'd be 17 plus m. Again, this is addition, so make sure you include your addition sign. The multiplicative property, when any number is multiplied by 1, the product is the number. This helps when doing fractions because we know when we have a fraction where the numerator and the denominator are the same number, that is equal to 1. So in this particular fraction problem, you would not need to sit here and go through your cross canceling and then come over and do all that, and do 6 8s and then simplify. If you know this property and you know that 8 eighths is 1, there's no reason to do any of that. You just know that the answer is 3/4 because this is just 1. Saves you some time. Okay, here we have 31. There is no operational sign right here, which means there's an invisible multiplication sign. So in essence, this says 31 times p times 1. Well, if we were to think 31 times 1, that would just be 31. So it's just 31p. And you get to a place where you can just do that mentally when you look up there. You know the 1, it just means that that's 31p. It's all about making mental math easier. The multiplicative property of 0 states that when any number is multiplied by 0, the product is 0. When I look at this problem, 4 times 5 times 7 times 0, it would be a waste of time to say, okay, 4 times 5 is 20, and 20 times 7, that would be 2 times 7, which is 14, add that 0, 140, oh wait a minute, it's times 0, so it's just 0. So you see all those things multiply together, and one of them is a 0. You know the answer is going to be 0. There's no reason to go through all of that. This is trying to make your life easier here. So it doesn't matter how many there are, it's going to be 0. So you look up here and you're like, okay, I need to multiply all this together, but you have three things you're multiplying. 16 times an unknown number times 0. One of them is 0, so you know the answer is 0. Okay, let's do this little practice here. I'm going to show you an example, and you're going to try to guess which property it is. Hopefully you took your notes, and you're looking at that, and you can refer back to them. Here we have addition with parentheses. You change the grouping. That is the associative property of addition. See if you can guess it before I show it. Here we have 3 plus 7 equals 7 plus 3. All we did was flip it. We changed the order. That is the commutative property of addition. Here we have 6 times 4, and then we flipped it, changed the order. 4 times 6, and you change the order. That is the commutative property of multiplication. Here we have 2 times 5. We flipped it. 5 times 2. It was just like the last one, but we got rid of the dot in between. We have the understood multiplication operation that takes place between those two numbers. So again, that is the commutative property of multiplication. It just looks different because I got rid of the dot. Here we have multiplication with parentheses. We've changed the grouping. Parentheses and grouping is the associative property of multiplication. 3 times the product of 5 times 4. 3, or the product of 3 times 5 times 4. We've changed the grouping again. Again, that is the associative property of multiplication. 8 times 4. 4 times 8, we've just flipped them, changed the order. That is the commutative property of multiplication. 99 plus 103. 103 plus 99, all we've done is flip them, change the order. That is the commutative property of addition. Here we have a 0, notice. So that is, which property was that? Can you guess? The additive property of 0. Which property is this? 8 times the product of 5 times 9. The product of 8 times 5 times 9. We've changed the grouping. So that is the associative property of multiplication. 2 plus 3. 3 plus 2. We've changed the order of addition. Commutative property of addition. A times B equals B times A. Multiplying. Change the order. Commutative property of multiplication. A times B times 0 equals 0. Anything times 0. That is the multiplicative property of 0. A times the product of B times C equals the product of A times B times C. We've changed the grouping. That is the associative property of multiplication. A plus B equals B plus A. We change the order of addition. That's the commutative property of addition. A plus the sum of B plus C. The sum of A plus B plus C. We've changed the grouping of addition, so that's the associative property of addition. I hope this helps you with properties of addition and multiplication.